Good evening, one and all. It's a Tuesday night. It's time, of course, for Super League Raw Weekly, and the eagle-eyed amongst you will see that we once again have bribed and put Martyn's arm firmly behind his back to get royalty in the room once more. Martyn, of course, joined us before the season, and as we're a third of the way through, we thought we'd get his reflections on the season thus far. Martyn, good evening.
Good evening, David. Hi, Greg. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
No, fine. Great to see you both. And
you. Thanks for joining us.
At the season so far, mate. That's really, it's an interesting year, 2023, I think, and lots of interesting things still to happen, I'm fairly sure.
Absolutely. Probably one of the closest starts we've seen in many a year. Very unpredictable, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. But I've got to say, I thought St Helens would struggle a bit after going down under and beating Penrith. I don't care what anybody says, to travel that distance and then come back and have to start playing again straight away back in Super League. It didn't hit them in that first game at Castleford, but it did, for several games after that. But unluckily for you guys at Warrington, I think they've finally got over it, and they showed it last Thursday night. I thought Saints last Thursday gave by far their best performance in Super League this season, as good as they were against Penrith, and notably with a few real big guys missing as well. So, some of the younger guys coming through at Saints, as always, they just seem to fit in seamlessly, don't they? And I thought Saints were convincing winners against the Wolves last week. And, the Wolves, it's demonstrated to Warrington now what they've got to do. If Warrington are going to win the grand final this year, as obviously they'd like to do, and they've shown enormous improvement from last year, but it's still a massive undertaking to either beat St Helens or Wigan. At the moment, Saints and Wigan look the two favourites to me to contest the grand final, but there's an awful lot of ground still to cover, and a lot of other clubs are putting in their two pennyworth as well. Kingston Rovers have been the real surprise team this year. I think at the start of the season, Betfred had them just ahead of Wakefield, in 11th place.
I think we did.
A big, massive odds for Hull KR.
Nobody was quite sure how Willie Peters would do as a new coach, but quite frankly, he's done a great job so far. Then, of course, we've got Lee, who are doing extremely well. No chance now of relegation for Lee.
No.
They're well, they're much more likely to be contesting the playoffs than being relegated. So that's a fantastic thing for their fans.
Well, we're going to Lee away, and I have to say I'm really looking forward to going and experiencing the Lee Sports Village. I think what they're doing down there, both before the game, but also the quality of the rugby they're playing with, the likes of Lamb. I mean, their pack. I mean, you talk about packs. Their pack, Amon, Asiatum, Kai O'Donnell, really impressive. Really impressive.
They are, and convincing winners against Leeds at the weekend. And you never know, by the time you get there, it might be Elton John or whoever opening the batting.
I think if we kept getting players banned, Elton John will be in the pack for us.
Yeah, maybe. But,
they might have done a better job on Thursday. I don't know.
Right.
They're putting on a great show, aren't they?
That's that point, Martyn. Talk about the World Club Challenge. Do you think that's a game that should be played after both seasons have finished, rather than
really? Yes. I mean, I think, if I'm honest about it, what I would like, if I were the world dictator for rugby league, benevolent dictator, I should hasten to add.
Can you let Warrington win it once or twice?
I would have both grand finals played on the same weekend to start with, and then 2 weeks later, I'd play the World Club Challenge in a midpoint venue. Qatar, perhaps. I mean, we saw what a great World Cup it was in Qatar. I know there are lots of, problems with Qatar in some people's minds as a venue, so you wouldn't want to understate those. But nonetheless, Qatar, Hong Kong, somewhere,
in the middle.
roughly halfway between.
They're saying that though, Martyn. It's watching NRL 360 this week, and they're flirting an NFL style round over in Las Vegas, Nevada. and the
Yeah,
NRL.
the opening round of the season they're talking about there,
yeah,
aren't they? Which
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think that might be a step too far. I mean, you can't underestimate. I mean, the NRL has had an incredible march forward this year in terms of its crowds, its TV viewing figures. The quality of the games, I think, in the NRL. I mean, just today, for example, it's Anzac Day in Australia,
St. George
New
game,
Zealand,
brilliant.
and you look at the two games today, 1 point margin, the Roosters beating the Dragons, and a fantastic game in Melbourne, the Storm beating the Warriors pretty late on. In front of sellout crowds or virtually sellout crowds, both games. It's funny really because I was one of those people who was a bit dubious about this new club, the Dolphins coming in this year. I wasn't sure what to expect of them, how they'd perform, and whether they'd be contesting with West Tigers, the wooden spoon. But they've been great so far, and they've actually given a massive boost to the competition. And what they've done is opened the door for a lot more expansion down there. Because a lot of the other 16 clubs were really frightened of expansion because they thought it wouldn't really boost, the income of the game, and they'd have to share the money with another partner and so on. But that's now all been blown away, hasn't it? And there might even be another new club near Brisbane, somewhere like Ipswich, or they might go to Perth, or who knows where they might go. And a second team in New Zealand looks a real.
I think that would be I think a second team in New Zealand would be a great idea.
I think it would.
Going back to that, I think COVID put paid to it, but there was talk of a rugby league in America, in North America, wasn't there?
Yes.
With a team in Las Vegas and I think Florida, Miami, I think, or was it Orlando? I can't remember.
Well, there are quite a lot of clubs in North America now, but all operating at a fairly limited level. Obviously.
Yeah, there was a talk of investing into an actual league after the Toronto experiment, but I think COVID put paid to that, I think.
What they need is a major investor, a Bill Gates type figure who will come in and set something up and, put down a lot of capital to create and then organize a rugby league competition there, with a massive emphasis on marketing, on promoting those clubs as an alternative, an off-season alternative, for example, to American football, which I mean, you can't compete with American football.
No.
You could put something on at an alternative time of the year, I think.
Yeah.
Right, we got lots to get through, chaps. Lots to get through. So first of all, let's say a few hellos in the chat. Linda Blunston's back with us. Graham Parrish, good evening to you. Chris Young, hang fire, sir. We're going to get to that. Don't you worry. Nick Fairbrother, hello. Gary Sandy, Gazelle, Jeff Saunders, Alex Sharp, as always. He's always with us. He's our Alex. Steve Cartledge, to name but a few. Get involved in the chat. Let us know your opinions, and I'll give you a shout out as we go through the show. Right, let's say lots to get through. Got the highlights of the games to get through. We are announcing we're going early on Super League Raw. We are announcing the coach of the month, the player of the month, and the team of the month for April. So that's something to look forward to, and the usual treats along the way as well. Right, okie dokie. Let's get in there. Let's get into some debate. First and foremost, for those of you who were sleeping, it was a big day on yesterday because, of course, this little cheeky thing happened. The Challenge Cup 6th round draw was made, and some tasty little nuggets in there as well. Catalan Dragons taking on the Warrington Wolves, one that stands out there. Salford Huddersfield should be a bit of a game. Leeds taking on Wigan. Wakey Kate taking on Lee. I think Wakey will probably not be too fussed about losing that one. I think they need to concentrate on the Super League survival. We have some really tasty fixtures in there, gentlemen. Let's just quickly razzle through it. Martyn, I'll start with you. From top to the bottom, who's going to be contesting the quarterfinals? Who are you going with?
Well, I would say the most difficult tie to call, I think, is Catalans Warrington, probably. I think I'd go with Catalans. I think I'd go with Castleford for the next one, then York, then obviously St Helens, Hull KR, Lee probably. Wigan, I think, will win at Leeds, and Salford should beat Huddersfield. But as you say, quite a few of those are tasty ties, and are not necessarily easy to call, are they?
No, and I thought Easter had been and gone, but as you've sinned, Martyn, we're going to have to kick you out now because you're not putting Warrington into the quarter final. So it's been lovely having you for the night. But no, only joking. Right, night, Martyn. Anyway, over to you, Greg. Who are you going with?
Everybody's going on about Leeds Wigan being the tie of the round. I think it's Catalan Warrington the tie of the round.
Yeah,
all day long. It depends. If the Warrington of 3-4 weeks ago turns up, then Warrington win. If there's Warrington of Thursday night, then Catalan win.
It all depends on how many injured players Catalans have as well. They've got a big problem at the moment.
Yeah,
I'm sure and of course, most of their squad, Greg, are involved this weekend as well.
They are, Exactly, they don't get a rest, do they?
No. I'm going to go Warrington, although I think Warrington, as much as I love going to Wembley, I think it might benefit Warrington to concentrate on Super League this year. But I'm going to go for Warrington, unless obviously our friends at the disciplinary have other ideas. Castleford, York, Saints, Hull KR, Lee, Wigan, and I'm going to tip Huddersfield.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah. Well, Huddersfield have got to start coming good at some time soon.
Yeah, I think Huddersfield enjoyed their trip to Wembley last year, and I think they were
lose one to win one. As they say, you've got to lose one to win one.
That might be Huddersfield's focus this year.
It could be. I mean, they've lost an awful lot of games narrowly this year, Huddersfield. Yeah. If they've got 6 more points in every game they played, they'd be a lot higher in the table. So
exactly.
So it's difficult to sort of know exactly what will be going through their minds. But I would certainly think the Challenge Cup is still a trophy they think they could win this year.
Absolutely. Just for sheer giggles, my tips for this one. I'm going to have to go Warrington. I can't not. I think they'll get their act together over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to go Hull FC. I think Cass are very hit and miss. I think Hull should have Hoy back. I think they shown signs against Huddersfield. That was a big win. We'll see the action in a minute. So I'm going to go Hull FC for them. I'm going to go York. I'm going to go, of course, Saints, KR. Lee, hard to not go Lee, Wigan, and I'm going to go, just because we've got a lot of the Cowbell Army that follow us, I'm going to stay loyal to you. I'm going to go Huddersfield. There you go. Right, before we move on to the next thing, let's have a quick look at the tries of the round. Let's have a look at these little nuggets. Here we go.
Seize the day.
So there they are, the tries of the week. Obviously, we'll get to see them again in a few moments' time when we take a look at the highlights. But go on then, Greg, what was your pick of that lot?
Burgess for Salford, I think.
It was a brilliant foot race, that, wasn't it?
Yeah, Sutcliffe's was good. And the only thing I'd say about Burgess is a little cheeky double movement at the end. Not sure. I think if that had been on TV,
Reggie.
that might have gone to the screen.
Reggie.
I'm not
Mate,
sure about that one.
Do you know what, mate? Tom Johnson, and I said it in the Sheds, after the game. I don't know if you've seen In the Sheds, Martin. We have a new program In the Sheds that's getting good views on YouTube. Well worth a view. But I said In the Sheds after the game, Johnson, for me, doesn't get the credit he deserves in terms of his defensive work. I mean, at the halfway line, Burgess is away, and all of a sudden, Johnson comes from nowhere. Didn't give it up. Very, very unlucky. I thought the Sutcliffe try, beautiful. Absolutely.
Was a nice one.
Josh Griffin's feet, mate, in that try, just in centre field, just to get the space, was absolutely beautiful. And of course, So for me, I'd probably go the whole one. But I enjoyed the Burgess one. What about yourself, Martin?
Well, I mean, I love the Burgess one as well, and I'm a great fan of Tom Johnson. I notice he's not in the 19-man England squad. I'm not sure whether that's because he's injured or just not selected, but I'm slightly surprised by that. Although, there are plenty of good wingers in the game at the moment, and Josh Charnley, who's leading the try-scoring charts, wasn't even in the 40-man squad. But I also liked a couple of St Helens tries against Warrington, actually. The Benison try was absolutely magical, I thought. Brilliant pass by Johnny Lomax, and an absolutely brilliant dummy sold to Matt Duffy to score. And then the T. Ritson try. I think one of the players of the season is potentially T. Ritson. I know he's not played many games yet for St Helens, but I was impressed with him in Australia when he scored a try against St George, and his try against you was of a similar quality, I think. And he's going to be a real good signing for St Helens. I'm really pleased to see them signing a kid out of the championship and him clearly being so keen to do well for them.
We were saying last week, weren't we, Dave, that we need more clubs from the Super League to have a look in the championship.
Well, look at James Harrison.
Going to Australia.
James Harrison for Warrington, Tyler Dupree for Salford. Dupree was at Widnes, and he's had an interesting.
Look at Danny Walker for Warrington as well.
So there's a few there that have really. But anyway, here's the squad. I mean, Martin literally come on 2 minutes before we started. So who'd have thought he could do a link like that? There you go. He's an absolute pro, isn't he? There you go. So this is the squad that is there. A lot pulled out. Very disappointing. I mean, don't get me wrong. Disappointed Lewis Dodd pulled out. I hope that's an injury. That Dodd got pulled out.
I think he took a knock.
7 of the 8 St Helens players pulled out. So they weren't a case of they weren't picked. They were pulled out.
Absolutely.
Which is interesting. And Sean Wayne's one of them where if that isn't for genuine reasons, it will be noted, knowing Sean Wayne. But yeah, really, as you look at this squad, for me, it's made it interesting because, a traditional English side against the French. I mean, don't get me wrong, the French team is getting better every single year because of the Catalan-Toulouse connection. But you would expect a fully fit and experienced England team to go and do France. Not necessarily in this game. They could actually lose this game depending on how the kids do. But what a real insight to the future that is. I mean, Holroyd's been outstanding this season. Dupree's been outstanding. Good to see Mikey Lewis in there. We expect big things from Nicholson at Warrington. So there's some really interesting picks in there that I think is going to make this a real spectacle on Saturday, and one that's going to have us intrigued. Greg, what's your thoughts, mate?
Yeah, was Jordan Abdul in the original?
He was in the 40-man.
I think he was in. Is he pulled out for injury? I think.
Injury. I'm surprised he's not there if he's not injured.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good look towards how a future England team might look.
Yeah.
Interesting to see who will play in the wing. I think Wellesby will be fullback, and I think Smith and Williams will be the halfback partnership.
Smith and absolutely. Harry Smith and George Williams. Centres are probably going to be Wardle and Toby King.
Toby King's signed for Wigan, hasn't he? So he'll be in there. Yeah. We've still been at Warrington. He would have got a sniff in.
I would imagine Josh Thewlis would probably be on the right wing, wouldn't he? Because there doesn't seem to be a massive number of backs there. So they're probably
Hanley and Ashton. I think it'll probably be Ashton and Hanley.
Yeah, it could be. It could be Ashton. I think Ashton normally plays on the left wing, doesn't he? I think so. Or does he? As far as I'm aware, but I think Thulis could be the guy who gets that right wing spot, but we'll see. But as you say, the interesting thing is that with it being a fairly young, what you might call an experimental England squad, I think that makes it a better game, as you've already said. And I don't know what we've not seen the final French squad, I don't think yet,
not yet.
as I'm
No, not
aware.
yet.
But they are getting more competitive, and I think they could give us a decent game. I don't think they'll beat us, but I think they are. I'd love to see it as a sort of no more than a 10-point game.
Yeah, let's hope it's competitive. Exactly. I agree. It'd be lovely to see it be a real competitive
Does
game.
this mean that Litton and Walker would be the hookers?
I think Danny Walker starts, and actually,
I think
like
Danny Walker does, yeah.
And like for Warrington, mate, I think Danny Walker's rapidly becoming. Well, I think he's moved ahead of Clark now at Warrington, and that's going to be interesting with the Clark contract.
Yeah,
because Clarkie's money, I don't think he's going to get as much as he's on now.
Well, strong rumours he's already been. He's looking at the year deal with Saints.
Yeah, and that wouldn't surprise me, mate, because I think Walker now is probably seen as the starting hooker for Warrington, and they're not going to throw. I don't think they'll throw money at Clark to stay. I think they'll look for other options, but I could be wrong. Could be wrong. I want to say that.
Yeah, interesting one with Ben Curry as well. Ben Curry's had a few good games this season, but last two has kind of,
the last 2 seasons.
He's what? Sorry,
Ben Curry hasn't shone over the last 2 seasons.
No.
The injury.
He's come back a bit, I think, this year.
Yeah, his knee injury has set him back a lot more than people will admit.
But it's interesting to look at that those 19 players and bear in mind that only one of them will be completely excluded from the game. One of them will presumably be the 18th man, which we now play. Normally doesn't get a run, but 17 of those 19 will actually be taking the field. So it's difficult to predict precisely who's not going to be. But I think he might not go with Tyler Dupree personally. I'd have thought Havard would probably get in before Dupree, at least on the bench.
I think Havard definitely. Yeah,
Sorry?
Yeah, I think Havard definitely plays for Wigan easy.
Well, not just because he plays for Wigan.
No, I'm only joking. You've got
to say that Wigan, to be, let's not knock Wigan. They do support the international game, and that's all credit to them. Their players, by and large, haven't pulled out, as is the case with Warrington, of course. And St Helens, we don't know why St Helens have.
Well, they're coming in for some pelters, Martin. They're coming in for some pelters. A couple of the fans forum. Dawn Baker is a Wigan fan. She's not convinced all 7 were injured. Alex Sharp also coming in. He's not convinced. And well, like I say, it is what it is. This is the team that we've got. I personally would love to see Dupree given a shot.
I think he
deserves it the way he's played. I think he's
I think Matty Nicholson might be the one to miss out, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it could be.
I think he might be the one to miss out, Matty Nicholson.
But we'll find out on Saturday.
We will find out on Saturday. Right. Before we get into even more debate, let's take a look at who the top performers of round number 10 were. Here they come. Of round number 10. Good to see Jake Clifford back for Hull FC in there. Some great faces. Good to see so many different sides in. We'll see the action in a second. But before we do, I want Greg's and Martyn's take on this announcement. A world first, Salford Red Devils. This is interesting. This is real. I've had a look at the detail from either 100, 250, a grand, 10 grand, 100 grand, whatever it's going to be. Great way of generating money into the club. Each person will get one share and will be able to vote on certain things that happen at the club. It's interesting. It's a hell of an initiative. I think a lot of other clubs will be looking at this one to see how this one pans out. Gentlemen, thoughts? Martyn, I'll kick off with you. What do you think?
Well, it's certainly, the idea of a community-owned club is very appealing, and there are some examples in other sports that we can probably think of. Although I'm never quite sure what their actual status is, but Ebbsfleet United in football, aren't they community-owned? And in fact, Barcelona FC is one of the biggest sporting organisations in Europe that's community-owned, although they're probably not a good example at the moment because they're going through an enormous financial crisis. So, I suppose Salford are doing this because they haven't really been able to find a major investor who will come in and sink a few million into the club and put them into the sort of St Helens, Wigan and Warrington bracket financially. I mean, they can. I've got enormous admiration for Salford. They play on a minuscule budget, well below maximum salary cap level, but yet they're competing very, very well every week with players who they've sort of signed, begged, stolen, and borrowed really from other clubs. And yet, their results say, and they play a great style of rugby under Paul Rowley. I actually think Paul Rowley, for me, is the coach of the year so far, as he probably was last year. So I don't know. I don't know how much they're hoping to raise with this scheme. I don't know how, to what degree they've tested it out. Have they actually? Can they be confident of the supporters and other people, clubbing together and coming and buying these shares? I certainly hope they can. But it's an interesting, it's quite a challenge. And as you say, I think other clubs are going to watch this really carefully to see how much money it raises.
Absolutely. What are you thinking, Greg?
Yeah, it's they become the first club, second rugby league club to be community run, community owned. It's an interesting one, as Martyn says. It's interesting that it comes just as the IMG proposals are put on the table. Showing, maybe getting points for community awareness. My biggest fear is, you see the highlights from the game against Catalan, and there's absolutely nobody in the ground. Okay, it's Catalan, but there's nobody in the ground. I think my biggest fear, as we've said a lot, is I think Salford needs to have a ground actually in Salford, like the Willows. The Willows attracted a hell of a lot more fans than the AJ Bell does, and I hope, like Martyn says, I hope they get lots of people engaged in this, and I hope it's a success. You see the Bundesliga model where fans have 50% plus one of the clubs. Maybe that's the way forward for rugby league in the future.
Well, Chris Young's in on the chat here. He says they're looking to raise $250,000 to start with, and they've already raised 50,000 already, which is a decent start considering it only got launched a few days ago. So we'll keep an eye on that one. But yeah, very, very interesting. Look, we like Salford. I think your point about Paul Rowley as well, Martyn. I mean, he said in his post-match press conference that they have no right to be in the top six based on what the deal, the resources that they've got. But credit where great deflection, great deflection, great coaching. But yeah, I mean, they just keep turning up and they're there.
They've got for me one of the best players in Super League in Brodie Croft.
Yeah, they have. Yeah. I mean, he was a brilliant signing, wasn't he? And
absolutely.
Tim Lafay as well. I mean, he's injured at the minute, but Tim Lafay and Brodie Croft.
Yeah.
Ackers, mate.
Walk into Saints, Wigan, Leeds, Warrington.
Andy Ackers.
Their spine last year played almost throughout the year and uninterrupted, and that was one reason why they did so well. Sadly, they got injuries right at the end of the season.
Yeah.
To Crofton Ackers, and that stymied them. But but they very nearly won at St Helens in the semi-final. Very nearly got to the grand final. So what an achievement that would have been. But I slightly disagree with you a bit about the stadium, because I mean, you say it's not in Salford. It's actually in Salford Metropolitan District, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but not in the heartland as the Willows.
Well, not in the middle of Salford. I mean, obviously there was some talk about them moving to Moor Lane, which is Salford City's football ground. I mean, I went to look at Moor Lane because I didn't know it, and that's certainly almost in Manchester, really, in North Manchester. But it's a very restricted ground, no parking facilities, very limited development on the stadium. And, I'm not too surprised that Salford City wanted to move into the Salford Stadium and swap places with the Red Devils. I think if the Red Devils had done that, it would have killed the club, probably. Not killed it, but killed it as a Super League club, because they could never have generated big crowds at Moor Lane, because it's simply not big enough. And I think
I don't think we thought Moor Lane was the answer, but it's a shame that they can't.
I think Salford have got
the AJ Bell.
Salford have got to find a way. They should be one of the biggest clubs in the game, because they're located right in the heart of a massive conurbation, the Manchester conurbation. They're well situated right next to the the M motorway that runs past the stadium. They should be able to draw much bigger crowds than they are doing. And I'm sure, I know it was a really poor crowd against the Catalans, but a lot of clubs get poorish crowds against them, unfortunately. But Salford, it's a weird thing that when they got to the grand final a few years ago, they took an enormous number of fans, probably about 15,000, to Old Trafford. And the real test for them is to they must know who those people were who bought tickets for that game. They've somehow got to get them back on board.
Well, if 15,000, they more than fill the AJ Bell, don't they? With 15,000, they more than fill the AJ Bell.
And it's really important that clubs can find some way of getting very near to selling out their stadiums, because the best marketing plan that was ever devised was to sell out a stadium and then to put up the house full signs. Once you do that, people flock to you. They
want to get in, don't they? They want to get in.
If people see empty stadiums, it doesn't look vibrant, does it? Let's face it.
No.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, I mean, but I think what's good for the game, and maybe good that Salford can piggyback on the back of, is this weekend just gone. 55,000 people went through the turnstile. That's the third highest gate of the season thus far, which is really positive. Round 10, and when you consider the games, one of them being Salford Catalan, to get 55,000 through, third highest of the season thus far, it's in good shape. And I think a lot of people who are going are continuing to go.
You've got to give some credit to the fans of Hull FC, because they came in off the back of 7 straight defeats. And they got more than 10,000 to watch them play Huddersfield, who don't normally take a big away following.
They got them over the line, didn't they? I mean, I think they said that after the game, that Tony Smith paid tribute to the fans, and rightly so, because they're incredibly loyal. Right, let's move it. Come on, we've got to move. We've got to keep this at pace, gentlemen. We've got loads to do. Super League Raw Fans Forum League, here it is. Stephen Barry remains top of the Fans Forum Fantasy League. There he is, albeit Reggie's Rockets, 77 points. They clawed them back last week. And the top performer was Warren Shave. And his Saints for 5, he scored 681 points. If you're not a part of the Super League Raw Fans Forum Fantasy League, then there's the pin, there's the password, get involved. There is a prize at the end of the season. We will keep that under wraps, but it's a good one and you won't be disappointed. Right then, let's get into some action, shall we? Starting off with the game that kicked off the weekend at St Helens. Warrington, of course, travelling there. Safe to say, Warrington were outplayed. It was a tight affair for the first 15 minutes or so until this happened, guys.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say?
It's quite interesting that George Williams does take the ball right to the line before passing to his close supports quite often. And he is susceptible to an interception from a player like Conrad Harrell, who has been known to do that several times before. Yeah. So you've got to be very careful. I mean, we all like a player who takes the ball to the line before getting rid of it and drawing in defenders, but you've always got that possibility, that could happen. And of course, an old player of yours, Lee Breers, used to be the pass master at.
Exactly.
Good article today as well, yesterday, Martyn, and really enjoyed it. For those who haven't got League Express, go and buy a copy. Martyn talking about the coaches down under, Lee Breers being one of them, really doing well worth a read.
I think the thing with this game was Warrington's very poor defence for at least 3 of the St Helens tries.
But it's been a good, but it's surprising mainly because they've been good in defence. I mean, in this game, for whatever reason, just wasn't there.
No, I mean the Lomax try. I think us 3 could have scored that. He walked through a hole. It was
Lomax's try was the one that did show up the Warrington defence, wasn't it? It sort of, that would make Daryl Powell go away back to the drawing board and look at
that and the Bennion try with Duffy's attempt at tackling. Was really highlighted some very, very poor defence.
Yeah,
I mean, Matty Russell did all right. He was probably our best player on the night. Matty Russell.
For me, mate, it's a bad night at the office. Nothing more, nothing less. I think for me, what I've seen in the last 2 games, George Williams, top of the Albert Goldthorpe, top of the Man of Steel. In the last 2 games, though, he's been outshone by Lomax and Smith. I mean, they have really controlled both of those games incredibly well. And we know that that's not George Williams' game. So Drinkwater and Williams, for me, they've come up short in the big games, and that's something that they've got to go and address.
Well, I'm not sure that Drinkwater's been quite up to the mark in the last couple of games. I mean, he's been brought in to be the sort of organizer, and Williams is supposed to be allowed to play his own game in a sense. But I don't think Drinkwater's kicking game has been much of a threat.
No,
if I'm to be honest about it.
Not in the last 2 games. It has.
No, early in the season, Martyn, he had some purple patches with a boot. Yeah. I think Salford.
You need to do it against big teams, don't you?
He does, yeah. He does.
You can do it against Wakefield or whoever, but when it comes to Wigan and Saints, that's when you've got to have your game right on the A grade. And I don't think.
I think Dave and myself have thought Hurrell's been quite poor in some respects this season, certainly defensively, but he had a field day against us on Thursday night. He was
what he lacks in defence. He's always over 150 metres, isn't he? I mean, he's an absolute bulldozer on that right
edge. He's not been quite as effective, I don't think, this season as.
Well, Saints results would suggest that, wouldn't they? But he's still a massively dangerous guy.
Huge.
Oh God, I wouldn't like him running there.
Gentlemen, did you see that? By the way, just that last try there. Did you see it? Did you see the last try?
Yes.
No, you didn't. Here we go. Let's have a look at that last try again.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, Mr. Hurrell, take a bow, sir. Take a bow, Conrad Hurrell.
But also take a bow to Richardson. Because the way that was a difficult pass for him to take, actually.
It was. Richardson did well as well, but that's our little did he just do that section. Yeah. We haven't done it for a couple of weeks.
No.
Conrad Hurrell, beautiful little offload there. As Martyn rightly says, Mr. Richardson picking it up really well, and a fabulous finish in the corner. Outstanding stuff. The AJM Awards this weekend, 3 going to Johnny Lomax, 2 for Richardson, 1 for Bell. I think Hurrell was unlucky not to get some points, if I'm being honest.
I do.
Daryl Powell says after the game that they've learned unbelievable lessons over the last 2 weeks and they need to learn from them. And I say amen to that. But Saints showing the champion side that they are. Beware of them. We all know, we've been saying right from the start of the season, they're going to be in the playoffs. There's no doubt about it. Question marks in terms of can they claw back enough points to get the Shield? But Saints will be there when it matters.
I don't think Saints are worried about the Shield. I think
they just
Saints will be targeting the grand final as Leeds do every year. They're not bothered about the Shield. They'll take some hits along the way as long as they're in that grand final at the end of the season.
We're all impressed with Hull KR. Every single one of us outstanding this season thus far. Mikey Lewis, has been superb. Abdul's been superb. But the person that I really enjoyed watching in this one was Matt Parcell.
Played really, really well, Matt Parcell.
Yeah.
And Castleford made this competition for quite a while in this game. I thought Castleford played probably the best I've seen them.
Yeah.
Well, the problem for Castleford in this game was Joe Westerman's departure on 50 minutes. I mean, that sealed it really. And I don't think OKR played anything like as well as they've done in previous games in this game, but they played well enough to just get the results. And as you say, Matt Parcell was a real key factor in that. I think OKR are really fortunate to have two such good hookers, who both normally spend time on the field in Parcell and Jez Litton. You've got Jez Litton, who's now in the England squad, and he's a real trier. I think is Jez Litton. I really like him as
he's a player. He reminds me a little bit of Dwyer. He can turn a game all by himself. Jez Litton, that little spark about him.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Yeah. And
should Litton have got 10 for that challenge on Westerman? Do you think, Martyn?
Do I think what? Sorry,
Litton, should he have got 10 for the challenge on Westerman?
Probably. Yeah, probably.
I think he should. Yeah.
It didn't look great in my opinion, but and there is a high degree of inconsistency, isn't there, in sin binnings, which I suppose is fairly inevitable. But you'd like to see every decision based on sort of logic and consistency, really, and I'm just not sure everyone is. But having said that, I think referees, generally speaking, this season, I think referees have done a pretty good job. To be honest, it's
a thankless job.
It's a thankless one. They all look so incredibly young. That's what really gets me about referees these days. They all look as though they're probably too young to play kids rugby league almost. But
talking about referees, my youngest daughter. We had a woman referee on Saturday, and she was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sure there would be.
Absolutely fantastic. She really was, talking to the kids all the time, explaining why decisions were made, giving them the chance, saying, you're offside there, just next time I'm going to penalise you. It was really good, a really, really good referee. And that's what it's all about. It's communicating with the players and letting them know why decisions are being made and where they're transgressing, I think.
Just going to a couple of Wakey players, for ex-Wakey players in this one. Jacob Miller and Corey Hall. Corey Hall, really good in this one. He was decent on his debut, far better in this one. But Miller, Martyn, not setting the world alight since he's put on a Castleford shirt.
No, it's always a bit more difficult for a halfback to change clubs, I think, because they're in the heart of the way that a team plays, and sometimes a halfback has to adjust his play to suit the club that he's joining, whereas Miller knew Wakefield's tactics and strategies inside out and actually led them. So it's not as easy for him he's not the captain at Castleford, obviously Paul McShane, I think Paul McShane is. So he's a real quality player in my view, and I think he'll turn out to be a very good signing for Castleford in the end.
I thought he had his best 40 minutes. First half, I thought he was very, very good.
Yeah.
And the rest of the Castleford team, he faded in the second half a little bit.
Yeah.
Why did Vanua not slide here?
Oh, God knows.
It was bonkers. I mean, I've just held it back while we're talking. I mean, when he gets this ball, I think he even said, I can't believe what I was saying. For all the world here, Josh Chandler, he'd be sliding for the last 5 meters there.
Yeah.
I mean, that for me, great tackle from Opicic. We've got to give Opicic his due. But we've seen this a couple of times for Rimo earlier in the season. The edges at Castleford are not.
If he gets that try, that's game one.
Yeah.
Win that
scoring tries. Spot on, mate. Spot on. Mikey Lewis, great season thus far. And I think he'll definitely feature for England at the weekend. I'd be surprised if he didn't. And
I'm sure
we love him. He's a great little player.
And a real sort of throwback in a way to the old style halfback, cheeky, cocky young kid, really, or at least to give that impression. And I think that's great to see personally. I like that sort of halfback myself.
I think you have to be cocky as a halfback.
Oh God, yeah.
A Sean Edwards type of halfback.
Yeah, as Viper said to Maverick in Top Gun, I like that in a pilot. Absolutely. Absolutely. No doubt about it. But
Where'd you get these from?
they just come out, mate. But no, I mean, look, Jay, I mean, this for me is the moment of the game. For those who didn't watch it, Miller there's just slid over. I love a little cheeky drop goal for 7-6. And no sooner does that go over, Jordan Abdul kicks off, and the Castleford players look at each other. It goes out into touch. Hull FKR get the ball back,
and the score,
and then this happens.
Yeah.
And Matt Parcell, very dangerous from dummy half, and this was the game at that point for me. This was the game. It was the moment.
He should never have got over the line from there.
No.
But great dummy half players often do that. You'll find lots of circumstances in which Danny Walker's done that once or twice. Harry Grant in the NRL does that quite frequently. I mean, obviously you blame the defence because the defence shouldn't let him in, but it's amazing how often we see it happen.
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh, Corey, all there bombing one. I'll just give him a great rap, and he'll love that.
I was so surprised that Wakefield let him go. I really was. Incredible.
Got a big future, massive future in the game.
I was actually
3 Albert Goldthorpe. Go on, Reg.
I was just going to say, I was at Castleford on Sunday covering the Warrington Wolves Women's Challenge Cup game, and they played on Friday night and they still hadn't tidied the ground up. It was incredible. This IMG are looking at things around grounds and things like that, and I know probably tidying the ground isn't one of the major features, but there was still
standards though, isn't it? It's professionalism, isn't it?
When you say they not tidied it, how did that show itself?
What was that? Sorry, Martyn.
What do you mean by not tidied the ground?
Well, there were still half pints of beer on the steps. There were pizza boxes, wrappers, food. It was horrific, and all around the ground was just it was like a tip.
And that was 2 days after they played.
2 days after, and you're thinking, and I'm not slagging Castleford off in any way, shape, or form. There might be a reason for this. I'm thinking you need to have a bit of pride.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. After most games have finished, you've got people walking around the stands tidying up.
Yeah.
And it was just as if the crowd had left half an hour before.
Yeah, that's really disappointing.
It was very, very disappointing.
That is disappointing. Well, back to that game that we just saw. Parcell got the 3 Albert Goldthorpe, 2 for Miller, and 1 for Corey Hall. Right, we now move on to the next game, which is Lee Leopards against the Leeds Rhinos. Oh, yes, beautiful. Lee doing splendidly well. They're like Lachlan Lamb. What a player Lachlan Lamb is.
He had a great game, didn't he?
He
had a great game.
Yeah, and great news, again, covered in Martyn's paper this week, that they're very hopeful that he will extend his stay at Lee alongside his dad, which will be great news if they can keep hold of him.
Yes, I mean, I spoke to his dad last week, and he was saying how happy Lachlan is at Lee.
Yeah,
he would be happy to stay longer. And of course, it's always a massive help, isn't it, when a club is clearly on the rise? Players want to stay at clubs that are on the rise. They don't really want to stay at clubs that are in a downward spiral. And obviously, everybody can see that. You look at the crowd at Lee, and it's generally rising this year. Although I think at the weekend it was probably just under 7,000, wasn't it? But
they're averaging around 7, just over 7.
Probably a bit disappointing for a game against Leeds, but.
Leeds aren't travelling so well this year, though, or certainly the early part of the season.
No,
Leeds haven't been travelling so well. And sometimes, the Friday night games over the Pennines have an effect on that.
Oh, I mean, I think Friday night games are crazy, personally.
Yeah,
particularly cross Pennine games.
I agree.
I mean, the M62 on a Friday night is
grim.
I drive on it quite a lot.
Yeah.
And if this game had been a Sunday afternoon, I'm pretty sure they would have got a bigger crowd. Who knows? You can't be sure. You can't be certain, can you? But I'm pretty sure more Leeds fans would have travelled, and probably
I would have thought so.
Probably they'd have got about 8,000 or so, But anyway, Lee will be perfectly happy because they won the game convincingly.
Yeah.
And against Leeds, you wouldn't have I mean, Lee have now got 10 points. 10 points ahead of Wakefield. They're looking up and not looking down.
Spot on, Martyn. They might. I mean, look, it'd be fairy tale stuff if they slid into the playoffs. But me and Greg were saying last week, 9 games was the quarter of the third of the season. Traditionally, if you look at the last 6 seasons, I think 3 of the last 6 seasons, 20 or just over 20 points has been enough. So they were on track for 24. So it is playoff form. It is playoff form. It's if they can maintain it.
Well, I think they've got a good squad, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did get into the playoffs. And you never know with Derek. If it looks as though they need 1 or 2 more players just to strengthen in 1 or 2 key positions, I wouldn't put it past him to sign a few before the end of the year.
No, absolutely. But no, really. I thought that the halftime score, the Bentley score, pretty much flattered Leeds for me at halftime. But really good performance. Well done to Lee. We put on our Facebook page on, I think it was the Saturday morning, officially they're going nowhere. And Martyn said it earlier, they're going nowhere. 2024 Lee Leopards, and I think it's great for the league. They're doing a great job both on and off the field. I think everybody's got a soft spot for them.
They've done a great marketing job. They've done a great PR job.
Yeah.
They surprise and when you do a PR job like changing a PR stunt like changing your name and changing your entire kit and changing the ethos of the club, you have to then back that with performances.
It's like playing the pink boots on. It's like playing the pink boots on under 12s.
It's because a lot of people mocked Derek Beaumont when he announced the name change, and some people said it was, done in a slightly amateurish way. But actually, it was done very enthusiastically. I mean, Derek is an incredible enthusiast, and he had his own rationale for wanting to rename the club and wanting to, adjust its colours. Really, they didn't want to be, Wigan's little brother playing in cherry and white just up the road from Wigan. Yeah. They want to be a separate entity, challenging Wigan, not forever bowing down to them.
I thought the launch was well executed.
I think by and large it's worked very well for them. I do think they ought to do something about their website, which they seem to have not done much work on. That's one aspect of
that's disappointing.
But their priorities have been putting a decent team together and making sure that they can survive in Super League and do more than survive. So
I don't think Dave's laughing at you, Martyn. I think somebody's
I'm not laughing at Martyn. Steph Sale is back with us. Welcome back, Steph. He's come out with a perler here. It's a belter. He says we should have been called the hyenas because we're the ones who are laughing now. Brilliant stuff.
Very good.
That's what we're talking about. That's a belter. Well done there, Steve.
Actually, Lee Hyenas has got a great ring to it.
He's got a great ring to it, but let's stay.
Maybe next season, the Lee Hyenas.
Next season. Let's just give a couple of shout-outs. Alex Sharp on that game. Lee blew us away in 20 minutes. After that, it was a bore fest, he says. Not having the best of times there, Alex. Steve Cartledge agreeing over the Friday night games. In terms of the Albert Goldthorpes, 3 for Pape, 2 for Ramon, 1 for Cameron Smith. Right, we don't normally do this, but as we're a quarter of the way through the season, we normally end with this. But I thought we'd do it halfway through, just so we can have a little bit of a chat about who's really catching the eye. Some of the teams that some of these players play for, I don't think you'd have thought that some of these players would have been in the top performers after 10 rounds. Let's have a look at who they are, and then maybe we can have a little chat about them and pay them the respect that they deserve. Here's the top performers after 10 rounds of Super League. Enjoy. they are the top performers after 10 rounds, and it's fair to say quite a lot of Lee Leopards in that lot.
Yeah.
Wasn't there? It's good to see. It's phenomenal to see.
It's actually refreshing to see actually that you know somebody like Lee can have so many players. I mean, Josh Charnley, written
Killing
off,
it really,
maybe.
Josh, this year, and
Yeah.
not anywhere near the England squad, which is pretty.
Same with Cameron Smith as well. Martyn Cameron
Yeah.
Smith was nowhere near the England squad.
No, that's right. That's right.
And for a loose forward to be top tackler, that's quite unusual.
Yeah, well, I think
Yeah.
in League Express this week we've got a readers' poll that asks who is the unluckiest player not to have been selected in the in the 40-man England squad, and we actually listed Josh Charnley, Jake Connor, Paul McShane, Cameron Smith, and Mark Sneed. So take your pick out of those, and
Absolutely.
I think all of them. All of them had a case to be in.
Well, Smith was our loose forward for rounds 1 through to 6.
Yeah, there's Mr. McQueen smashing over again.
Superb, mate. I mean, obviously we didn't talk too much there a moment ago about the try, but we saw it earlier on. The brilliant try for Liam Sutcliffe. I was very critical of the way David Litton scored his try earlier in the season when they were behind in a game. But Litton is growing at Hull FC. He had a really good game.
He certainly did. He's a very promising player. I think he was at was it Whitehaven last year for a short spell, and he played very well there. And very eye-catching kid, and I think he's going to be a big thing at Hull. The thing that worries me a bit about Hull, and I'd love to see this change, they've had so many young players come through in recent years who have looked as though they're going to be really great and make the grade and play for England and all that sort of stuff. And yet they've never quite fulfilled their potential. Jamie Shaw is a sort of example of that, I suppose. When he first burst on the scene, he looked absolutely brilliant. And I know he's been very unlucky with injuries and that sort of thing. But Hull don't, they've got Ben McNamara playing at half-back for them at the moment. I really hope that he perseveres and becomes a real top player. And young Litton and others, talking about Litton, they had Jez Litton and they let him go to Hull Kingston Rovers, and it's only at Hull Kingston Rovers that he's come through and now he's selected in the England squad. So
you talk there about McNamara, Martin. He's obviously off contract, isn't he, at the end of the season?
I think he is. Yeah. So goodness knows whether they'll retain him or not. I hope they do, but. So there's a lot of potential in Hull, but we just need to see it being fulfilled a bit more often than it is.
Yeah, I think you got players like Joe Cater as well. They seem to get these players who then seem to get injured.
Yeah,
players seem to get injured.
You can't really blame anybody for that, I don't suppose.
No, it's just that I think
very frustrating.
Unfortunate, aren't they? That
Well, just
Jordan Abdul went to Hull KR and he's in the form of his life as well. I think
yes, that's right. Absolutely, yeah.
So what's I'm sure that's something that the Hull fans might be able to enlighten.
Well, I often sometimes think about doing a little exercise where you pick the best team of players who used to play for a certain club. So if you're picking, the best,
mate, we do it at Warrington all the time.
You'd have Abdul and Litton in there, and no doubt quite a few others. Reece Lynn perhaps at Wakefield, and quite a few others.
Just back to this game. Had Sam Halsall have not bombed this, because this is a shocker from Halsall.
This is awful.
Had he not bombed this, had that gone in and they'd have levelled up, that for me was the game changer. Because
it was, yes.
Because with Hull, the way they've been playing 7 losses from 7, if that gets squared up at that point in the game, it's then squeaky bum time. Liam Sutcliffe there then goes in and seals the deal for Hull. So they got away with one there for me, Hull, at that point.
Oh yeah, I mean it wasn't an easy win, was it? But Hull are happy to win in any way they can at the moment. Winning by any number of points.
Going back to Hull, I think a lot of Hull fans are saying Brad Fash is really underrated.
Oh, good player.
He's off contract. We have a lot of Hull fans who are on our forum, and be interesting to see what they think. And I think a few were saying that he's unlucky not to be at least considered for that England squad at the moment.
Well, he's a player who sort of goes a bit under the radar. Is
like Yates. Like Luke Yates at is it Huddersfield.
Well, Luke Yates tackles like a machine, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He does. He does. He's been.
He
I
was
mean,
second
not
in
this
the,
week.
He was
Not
second
this
in the
week.
tackle list.
Yeah.
Yeah, not this week, but the last two.
Just looking at tackle bus there, that list of tackle bus, you've got Bevan French in first place, which was hardly surprising. But then in second place was young Will Price from Huddersfield, which was, I thought, particularly interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In terms of, well, your paper declared on the front page a giant victory for Hull FC. I completely agree. 3 points for Danny Houghton, massive for him. He had a belting game. 2
He
for
still
Litton.
does well, doesn't he? He's been doing it for
for
such a long time.
He has indeed, and he's a tackle machine as well, Danny Houghton. So, yeah, deserved winners. All and fair play. A lot of the Huddersfield guys coming in, patting them on the back, saying that they deserve to win it. Ian Watson after that game saying that they were outmuscled in defence. That'll be a concern for the Cowbell. We expected Wigan to win this. Do we see this as an improvement?
With Wakefield, it's got to be an improvement, hasn't it?
Fans.
I think we've got the media tipping competition, and I think the average tip was, I think, something like 50 points in this game, and it was a lot less than that, wasn't it? So I think Wakefield can be.
Well, it was 60-0, wasn't it? It was 60-0 earlier in the season.
It was, yeah.
So have Wakey got better, or did Wigan just cruise?
Well, I didn't see the game, so it's difficult to say with any certainty, and probably a mixture of both, really.
I mean, look at this. Look at this defence from Tafai here. That's absolutely shocking defence.
Yeah.
Good feet though, mate. Good feet.
Oh, it's shocking defence. He opens the door for him and says, "After you, sir."
Yeah.
It's absolutely shocking defence.
May I take your coat?
Yeah. He looks up and says,
"Yeah."
He looks up again and says, "What?"
Yeah. So some players who clubs signed from Australia who are pretty near the end of their careers, aren't they? And are struggling when they come over here, and you've got to be very selective. But that's why clubs need to develop their own talent, because
I agree 100%.
Quite frankly, to sign players of the right standard now from the NRL is just probably beyond most teams. There was Matt Pete was saying last week, being linked with Luke Thompson. We'd love to have him, but not at the price that's being quoted. That just is unrealistic, and I think that's true, and I don't see Luke Thompson coming back here, to be perfect.
No, he's on too much money. So he's on too much money.
Yeah, and having said that, Martyn, I mean, Wigan reserves and the academy team have got some big lads in their pack. Let's develop those and bring them through.
Well, I think this young man, Junior Nasemba, is going to be quite a player. Eventually, he's still a very young kid, but he's a giant of a lad. And I actually went over to Wigan a few weeks ago and spent half a day with them, watching them train and chatting to them and having a chat with Matty Pete and so on. And I've got to say, I had a chat with Junior Nasemba, and what a lovely young man he is. And I really hope he makes the grade and really does it big.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are a lot of players in that reserve and the academy team that are going to maybe not for Wigan, but are going to be good Super League players in a few years' time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good players in that team.
Absolutely, mate.
Yeah, that production facility is just keeping going, isn't it, at Wigan?
It's Saints and Wigan, they just know how to produce.
Saints and Wigan.
Yeah.
Just on Saints though, again, the official Super League team of the week, Delaney for Saints got in it, and I scratched my head on that one. I really do. I scratched my head on that one. Did not see. I don't know who picks it. Do you know who picks it, Martyn?
No.
Bonkers.
No.
I mean, absolutely bonkers, and things like that. It makes a mockery of it. If you're gonna, I mean, the young kid, he did all right, but he was not prop forward of the week. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, back to this one. 3 for Bevan French, 3 more Albert Gold, 4 points for Bevan French. I think that puts him now second behind Williams. 2 for KPP and 1 for Abbas Miski. Right, we're now going to announce, no surprises here, the Super League Raw Coach of the Month had to be Matt Pete. Wigan Warriors. Played 4, won 4, 83 points scored, 24 points conceded. Coach of the month. At the start of, before round 7 started, were 4 points behind Warrington, and who had a 37-point deficit in terms of the points difference. And they've turned that around. They've clawed back the 4 points in the league, and they're now 17 points in terms of the difference. It's been a stellar April for, and when you consider who they played, a decent, quality league, league team. We've all been waxing lyrical over league. St. Helens on Good Friday, then Warrington. All right, the Wakey game was probably a bit of a gimme, but going back to back, Saints and Warrington, getting the wins, getting the job done. Well done to Matt P. He gets our April Coach of the Month.
Well, I think he deserves it, and I really admire Matt Pete a lot. And you were talking a bit earlier about the article I've written in this week's League Express about coaches going to the NRL, and all the clubs that the British coaches have joined have improved a lot this year, particularly Brisbane with Lee Briers, who was at Wigan last year. So Matt Pete lost Lee Briers, at the end of last season, replaced him with Tommy Lulai, but they're carrying on playing really some great rugby. And I just think that there's going to come a point, I think, where the NRL clubs are going to look at British coaches and think, we ought to have a head coach who's a British coach, never mind just assistant coaches. And it's going to be really interesting to see who's the first British coach who actually gets the head coach's job at an NRL club. I mean, you've got St. George at the moment talking about replacing Griffin, Anthony Griffin.
Yeah.
Well, somebody like Matt Pete or, several other coaches, I think, in this country could quite conceivably coach a club like that in the NRL and do a lot better than
Justin Holbrook as well, Martin. He's supposedly under scrutiny.
Well, Justin Holbrook's there. We've got Christian Quinn at the Dolphins, of course, assisting Wayne Bennett, and in year 3 he will take over as the head coach. That's understood over there. So we are making a big impact, and I was tremendously impressed when I went.
Right, now we go to the Player of the Month.
Okay.
We go to the Player of the Month, and we're staying with Wigan. It can only be one person. It has to be Bevan French. He has been exceptional in the month of April. Played 4, won 4, 2 tries, 7 try assists, 3 clean breaks, 20 tackle busts, 591 metres. It's fair to say that French's form has been pivotal in Wigan's charge to the top of Super League in the month of April. So Wigan take both, as Warrington did in the first month with Powell and Vaughan. This month, it's a double for Wigan with Bevan French and Matt Pete. Greg, no arguments with that, mate?
None whatsoever. And, he's kind of taking the mantle now that Jay Field is out for a while.
Yeah.
He's he's shouldering that mantle a little bit himself. But can have no complaints. The guy's a superstar. Great that he's played in our game and hasn't been tempted back over to Australia.
Yeah. Absolutely.
As a Warrington fan, you've got to admit he's box office. And he's one of the players that we want to keep in Super League for the next few years.
And he's also one of the players that we ought to be really promoting strongly. It's almost criminal. You've said he's a superstar, but the trouble is he's only a superstar in rugby league.
Yeah. I agree.
He's a superstar who transcends any individual sport. He ought to be being talked about in the same breath as some of the major football stars in this country, in my opinion. I wrote a very critical article a week or so ago about the non-executive directors of the Rugby League and RL Commercial, who ought to be going at it, strongly on social media, drawing attention to players like Bevan French, because if we don't, those of us who are involved in the game don't do it, who the hell will?
Exactly. And there's nothing more annoying for me, Martin, on a Saturday morning when there's been a Super League programme and there's not even a mention of it on BBC Sport on a Saturday morning. It's very rarely that Mike Bushell, it seems to be Mike Bushell, I don't know why, that there's no acknowledgement of Rugby League having taken place the night before.
But that's the IMG bit,
really
isn't it?
frustrating.
That's the IMG bit. I mean, the marketing, the commercial side of it. I mean, again, I don't stalk Martyn. Don't anybody think that I do stalk Martyn. But actually, the reason Martyn and I me and Martyn got back in touch because that article he's talking about, I actually dropped him a line on it. That was a really good summary of really people. Fair play to Martyn. He was kicking people up the backsides, and rightly so, because he's like, well, you've got all of these people who are on decent wages. We need to start to see what they're doing overtly, not behind closed doors. We need to be seeing it in the media.
The trouble,
really good article.
The trouble with the people who run the game is that they seem to see their job in a bureaucratic way, as sorting out, the minutiae of rules and regulations and so on. It's got to be a lot more than that. We've got to focus on. I mean, for the good of the next TV contract, we've got to get players more into the public eye. People love watching great sportsmen, great players, and Bevan French is certainly at the top of the tree as far as we're concerned. And we've got to get people, we've got to get influencers on social media like Twitter and Facebook and so on and so forth and TikTok, for example, to just to run with little 30-second examples of the brilliance of Bevan French and lots of other players as well. Some of those brilliant tries that you've shown already on this program, it shouldn't just be us talking about them. It should be people, throughout the country saying, "My God, did you see that? Did you download those tries from Super League at the weekend?"
I think there's the argument as well. I mean, you think Warrington have got Warrington's got Stuart Pearce, and fair play to Stuart Pearce on TalkSport. He does talk a lot about rugby league, but we know that Roy Keane's a Wigan fan, and because of the prevalence of football, are the likes of Sky missing a trick in terms of bringing them into their panel for the odd game and promoting the fact that as a fan almost a Roy Keane or a Stuart Pearce, because would that attract some football fans to come and sample it and see it? I don't know. I mean, you've got these higher profiled sportsmen, and there's a lot of them that watch our game. We just don't seem to tap into them. And I think we should, because you think of Twitter followers. I mean, you mentioned Twitter. How many Twitter followers some of these people got?
Millions.
If all of a sudden they were promoting.
No, I mean, they ought to be brought on. And similarly, it would be good to see one or two leading rugby league players occasionally going on to Sky and to talk about football, perhaps. Because a lot of rugby league players quite enjoy watching football and have probably got an interesting perspective on it. So it'd be great to see Bevan French, talking about Harry Kane or somebody, whoever it might be.
But again, behind the scenes, Martyn, a lot of our rugby coaches.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of our rugby coaches go into football and do talks.
A
lot of them do that. And again, so they have got an influence.
And it's time we actually push that a bit more, far more than we don't seem to push it at all at the moment. So
I think marketing and PR is one of the great missed opportunities this sport has.
Well, it's not just a missed opportunity. It's just something we don't do very much.
We don't do very well.
The trouble is we tend to market to our existing audience without trying to work out how to claim a new audience. And how young people, for example, might be attracted to the game. And they seem to have found the secret now in Australia of doing that, given the rising crowds and so on this year. I mean, a lot of people are saying in Australia now, rugby league is being talked about at weekends and during the week in a lot of places that have just a few years ago would never have been talked about. People are starting to come out of the woodwork, going to work in, club replica strips and all that sort of stuff, which, hasn't been seen before, even in some of the, the leading law firms or financial firms or whatever it might be. And that's a really interesting development, I think, because we've always had this thing about rugby league being a working class game, whether in England or Australia, and to some degree that's been true. It's been mainly supported by working class people, but it's like soccer, you know, in the 1990s, it transformed itself from just being a working class, a sport supported by working class people, to being a sport supported by everybody, actually. You know, and it doesn't matter now what your background is. You know, a lot of people have got a football team that they support, or at least claim to support.
And that was what Super League. That was what the launch of Super League was kind of all about, wasn't it? It was forget the politics behind it with Murdoch and everything, but it was meant to be the kind of the big summer sport to fill that gap when football wasn't on.
Yeah.
And you know, it never kind of transpired in that way.
No,
it didn't.
I mean, it's because also we don't, you know, we have games played at all sorts of different times. We were supposed to be going to celebrate wonderful Sunday afternoons of rugby league football, and yet, you know,
And it should be.
we had 3 games on Sunday afternoon, which was actually almost unique.
Yeah,
because the vast majority of games are now played on Friday night, and it's ridiculous because we actually have games going out live that are up against the TV game when we actually surely want the maximum TV audience. So to have, you know, if you look at football, when there's a big game on TV, you know, whether it's on Saturday or Sunday or Monday night or whenever, they never have games going up against it. You know, they actually make sure that the audience is going to be watching that TV game, and we just don't do that. It's just madness, in my view.
Yeah, I think if you're not a TV game, then you should play your game at 3 o'clock on a Sunday.
Oh, I just couldn't agree more. Yeah,
absolutely. Right, whilst we've been chatting there, forgive us, the Salford game has been ran through. Again, very similar to the Hull FC Huddersfield Gents. Had Kieran have kicked to go 16-all and gone to Golden Point, would Salford have held up? Salford first half, very, very strong. Second half, Cat Lane came flying back at him. I mean, again, 2 really tight games, the whole game in this one.
And it was a kickable kick as well. It
was a kickable kick for a player of that quality. You're quite right, mate, with the ball.
I was surprised when he missed that.
Yeah. Johnson finished this one well. We talked about the Burgess try and the tries of the week, but you know, this plan move, we've seen this a lot this season, but this took some scoring. And Johnson,
if this is a TV game, does this go to the screen?
Possibly. I think he got it down.
I think he gets it down, but it goes to the screen all day long.
I think he did.
I think he got it down. But look, great game there. And I have to say, the King won a I got his try. I have to say, the legend that is the King. In the Albert Goldthorpe medal, Brodie Croft got 3 in this one. Tompkins put on a Catalan shirt, got 2. And he got 1.
Of course he did. Of
course he did. We're just having a laugh.
He'd get 2 points if he ran the water on it.
Right, gentlemen, we're very close. We're not a million miles away from the end. It's that time. It's that time of the week that Greg loves every week. It is, of course, the Super League Raw. There's only one team of the week that's worth watching. It is, of course, the Super League Raw team of the week. Who's made it this week? Let's find out. Here we go. It's the Super League Raw Team of the Week for round number 10. Here we go again at fullback, rapidly becoming the most famous Davy since the Monkeys' Davy Jones. He's Davy Liston, and I'm fast becoming a believer. Since being pushed to fullback, the 19-year-old has grown in confidence and stature. Cheer up, Sleepy Jean. At number 2, it is now going to be 13 tries in 13 games for the impressive Aber Smisky of the Wigan Warriors. If he was wearing a suit in this one, he would have been in the image of Fred Astaire with his twinkle toes and balance. Shall we dance? At number 3, how can a man who looks dead on his feet after 20 minutes deliver for full 80 minutes? Week in, week out, the left edge of the Warrington defence had no answer to the big man. And if Demi Moore is still doing pottery, these soft hands will certainly help. And number 4, and for the 3rd time this season, will be Liam Sutcliffe of Hull FC in the Team of the Week. His 2nd try on 58 minutes was the critical score in this one. 5 now for the season for this exceptional talent. At number 5, on the wing, will be Joe Burgess. His 80-yard foot race with Tom Johnson was a feast for the eyes on 39 minutes. And in the end, that score score was the key to the Salford Red Devils gaining the 2 points. By did they hold on? And number 6, in the biggest games in the face of adversity, quality players rise like a phoenix, and Johnny Lomax provided the calm and the inspiration for the Saints to demolish an underperforming Wire. At number 7, well, it was just another day in the office for the magnificent Lachlan Lamb. What an addition to Super League Lamb is. Great feet, strong game management and unpredictability are just some of his great attributes. At number 8, without the power and determination of Chris Satai of Hull FC. Well, they would have struggled, wouldn't they, to have got the job done against the Huddersfield Giants. The fans gave him a hero send-off with Tony Smith waiting in the tunnel to show his appreciation too. At number 9, he has been getting better and better, and perhaps this was his game of the season thus far for Edwin Impapa. He's now absolutely announced himself on the 2023 season. His game was as big as his biceps, and his talent is there for all to see. At number 10, it had to be Tom Amone. In our opinion, second only to Paul Bourne in the front row this season, averaging over 100 metres a game and 8.3 metres a carry. This 26-year-old is in dream team form. At number 11, in the second row, is the beard to be feared. Kane Lynette was central throughout this game on either side of the ball. He could have been sent for 10 though, having sent Westerman to Disneyland. At number 12, the immovable Kai O'Donnell. Oh, the form second row of Super League was at it again against the Rhinos. This is his third selection of the season, and he's sure not to be his last. Quality! And finally, at number 13, a true example of leadership. He's leadership by example, and boy does John Asiata prove this week in, week out. Lee are playing like playoff contenders, and Asiata is playing beautifully. This is your team of the week.
The team of the week for round number 10 in the record books. Yes, count them up. 5. That's 5 Lee Leopards players in the team of the week this week. Oh, beautiful stuff. There you are, Reggie. What did you make of that one?
You enjoyed that, didn't you, Dave?
Brilliant.
I tell you, Conrad Hull, he's got the turning circle of an oil tanker, but he can't outfind the try line.
You can indeed. You can indeed. I have to say, I don't know whether Demi Moore.
Try, he walked to the line and nobody could catch him.
I have to say, I don't know where the Demi Moore came from, mate. I don't know where that came from. He just stuffed it in there. I had visions of Conrad Hull behind Demi Moore in Ghost. With his
Conrad Hull has got visions of that as well.
What a legend. But no,
I'm very impressed to see 3 Hull players there. You wouldn't have had those in for quite a few weeks, would you? So that's a sign of progress for them, particularly young David Litton. That's really interesting.
Well, he had an absolute mare on his first game.
He's Litton in that game. Litton in that game at the weekend. I mean, I've read a lot of commentary on it. I've read a lot of the fans' views on it, and he had a stellar game. And look, I mean, again, I mean, like I say, how on earth Delaney got in the front row when you've got Amon and Satai this weekend? I just don't get that.
Satai had his best game for Hull this season
by a country mile. Parcell was unlucky. I went with Pape. Parcell unlucky, I would say, at hooker. Apart from that, I think it pretty much picked itself, quite frankly.
Great team. How underrated is Kane Lynette?
Oh, just hugely.
He's solid. He puts in a performance week in, week out, and flies under the radar.
Normally at this point in the show, we say, stop the season now! But no, let's not do that.
You can if you want.
As Wigan take over at the top of Super League, and congratulations to the people, I was going to say Pieters then, but anyway, there you go. Congratulations to Wigan, of course, leading Super League after 10 rounds. Warrington now in second, and look at what that's done for Hull at the bottom there. That's 6-point gap now to Wakefield. Brilliant for them. And look at Lee just about knocking on the door. Fantastic stuff. Really good. Really, really good indeed. Right. This is how we're not doing predictions today because, of course, we will be back on that.
I'm off the bottom.
We'll be back on. We're not going to do predictions today. We'll be back next week to do predictions. But this was the Prediction League. And as you can see, I pulled a little bit further away from the fans' forum. Greg was the best performer of the weekend with 13 points. I got 8. The fans' forum got 6. And Gary Schofield only got 6. Which means Gary, who was leading for long periods. That's not the right one. That's the previous one. But Gary, of course,
now at the bottom, and he led for so many weeks, so he'll be disappointed with that.
I'm
Right,
going to stand up for Gary. He'll be back. Don't worry.
he'll be back. Well, just let him know that he's included. Just let him know. Sky Sports this week. These are the games that are coming up. Of course, we know about the England games on Saturday afternoon. But if you like your NRL Rugby League, Canberra Raiders taking on the Dolphins, that'll be a great game. Of course, on a day when, of course, a big announcement was made, right, and going to the Souths next season. That's a big story coming out of Canberra. That's a massive story that's come out there today. Manly Sea Eagles taking on the Gold Coast Titans, and then on Sunday, St George Illawarra taking on the Canterbury Bulldogs. Before we go, we're going to announce the Super League Raw Team of April. That's right. And again, I'll take Martyn and Greg's views in terms of this one. But ladies and gentlemen, here it comes. No major fanfare on this one, but here it is. Here it comes. So there you are. Kevin French at fullback. On the wings, Greg Eaton's not Charlie. In the centres, Tom Howell and Jake Wardle. Johnny Lomax at standoff. Harry Smith at scrum half. The two props, Tom Amone and Ethan Havard. We did say Havard's been having a great season. Matt Parcell in at hooker. The two second rows, Greg mentioned him earlier. Shane Wright had a brilliant round 7 to round 10, as did Chris McQueen. Those two outstanding between rounds 7 and 10. And John Asiata of the Lee Leopards coming in at loose forward, taking over from Cameron Smith from the March Team of the Month. That is the team, gentlemen. Any surprises? Anybody else you would have had in there?
I think if Paul Vaughan had played for the full month, I think he might have been in there ahead of maybe Havard or Amoni. But no, I mean, it's Chris McQueen. He's just, you know, he's just a great player, and he puts 100% in every week. Shane Wright has been really, really impressive for me for Salford. No argument with that at all whatsoever, with Shane Wright being in there and Chris McQueen.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that Hull KR have been on a winning streak throughout the month, haven't they? And there's only one of their players there, Matt Parcell, who I'm sure is a great selection. You know, no Jordan Abdul there. That's perhaps, but you know, as I say, Harry Smith and Johnny Lomax have both been brilliant as well. So I think Harry Smith is really coming to the fore this year, and he'll play.
He had a slow start, didn't he? The first few rounds, he had a slow start, but he's starting to get going again.
I think he's an outstanding player, and you know, I think he played very well against you, for example, against Warrington rather. And he'll play for England on Saturday, and we'll see how he does in that sort of situation.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he's partnered with Williams, how he'll do.
Yeah, I just hope there's going to be a decent crowd at Warrington on Saturday.
Are you going, Martyn?
I hope to be going. Yeah. But it partly depends on how much work I have to do in the office. But I certainly hope to be there. And but I've not seen a terrific amount of promotion of this game. So I hope that plenty of tickets have been bought for it. I do fear a little bit.
Hopefully the Warrington.
Yeah, I think a lot of the seats have been sold for this one. I'm not so sure about the South Stand Massive. I'm not so sure about that, but we were looking at tickets the other night, and I think there's a fair few seats sold for this one, so that bodes well.
It does.
I think this is going to be one of those games where people just walk up on the day and decide last minute. Let's go and watch it.
Maybe.
Let's
hope. Yeah.
So,
I mean, we're going.
But I think
we're going because my two daughters plays, and they're interested. They want to see the England women play against France. So
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, just to give a bit of clarity to the team of the week, a few people. I mean, Lachlan Lamb's being mentioned by Steph Sell, and you're quite right. Lachlan Lamb. It was a real close battle between him and Harry Smith for that number 7 jersey in that Team of the Month. But the way we operate here at Super League Raw, they must play in all 4 games. That's critical. They must play in every game for the month, and then of course from there they can get into the Team of April. And Harry Smith It's fair to say, Martyn mentioned it a minute ago, he pretty much beat Warrington alone in that game, and he's been good against St Helens and good against Lee, and it was also very good against Wakey at the weekend. So that's the Harvey Smith bit. So just to give a little bit of context with regards to that, they have to play all the games in that period, and then we go from there. But that's our team for April. We'll keep you posted, of course, on the May one as we get to the end of the month. But that's us for another week. It's been a fantastic hour and a half of debate, chat, sport, enjoyment, Martyn. It's been wonderful to have you a quarter of the way into the season. Who knows? We might get you back 2/3 of the way through the season to cast your eye.
That's next week, then, Dave. 2/4.
I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Let's hope so. Have you enjoyed it again, Martyn? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great to see you, and we'll keep in touch.
Definitely. It's been great to have you along, Martyn. Enjoy it.
It has indeed.
Enjoy it.
So there's no fanfare going out. We looked at the top performers halfway through the show. All that's left to say is get behind the England team at the weekend.
Yeah, get down Sadler Jones and what's
absolutely, mate.
And get there for the women's game.
Absolutely,
Absolutely, the women's game.
Yeah, get there for the women's game. See both games back to back. Jodie Cunningham, of course, her first game as skipper for the women's England women's team. So try and get down to Halliwell Jones if you can at this week to watch that. We will be back this time 8 o'clock next Tuesday, where we will be having a quick look at that England game. But of course, we will be taking a look ahead to the round 11 fixtures, and there's some absolute pearlers in the round 11 fixtures that we will be discussing next week. But from all of us three, myself, Martyn, and Greg, keep watching your rugby league, guys, and we will see you this time next week. All the best for now.
See you soon, guys. Thanks, Martyn. See you soon.